Welcome to our first video in our Tableau series. In this video, we're going to work on bringing a database into Tableau as well as cover some of the basics of the interface once you have connected a data file. Let's get started. When you first open Tableau for the very first time, or when you are trying to connect a database, you get this screen that shows the connect here on the left hand side, and you can connect to a file. You also could connect to a server. So in other environments that you work in, perhaps when you leave UT and go to work, you could possibly connect your Access database to a live server, such as a Microsoft SQL server, an Oracle server, a MySQL server, and so on. Many companies you'll find connect Tableau directly to their server interfaces because Tableau has a really cool feature that allows you to live connect and will bring in your data as it changes. It's one of the features about Tableau that makes most companies who use it really keen on it. But here in our class for BA 342, we're not going to connect to a live server. Instead, we're going to connect to a file located on the hard drive of your computer. As you know, we've talked about the BA 342 database extensively in this class. In Module 2, for Exam 2, we worked in a Microsoft Access database. We could very easily bring in that same Microsoft Access database here into Tableau. It's one of the options, as you'll notice. If we choose to bring it in as an Access file, however, Tableau has quirks when dealing with Access that it doesn't have with dealing with other types of files. Some of those quirks are caused by the way we have not set up relationships within our data, as we've only used this database for queries. But without going into the technical details of why they have a love-hate relationship, let's suffice it to say that Access and Tableau have a love-hate relationship. So for this demonstration, we're instead going to bring in a Microsoft Excel file. As discussed in class, oftentimes on a Mac, if you have Tableau, on your Mac side, you would have to bring in a Microsoft Excel file as you don't have access to Microsoft Access. However, I would just like to tell you that Tableau and Excel interact seamlessly where Access and Tableau do not. So for ease of demonstration, and just so we don't get aggravated in our demonstration, we're going to choose a Microsoft Excel file. So let's go ahead and link up. If you double click on Microsoft Excel, you'll get this open dialog box, and all it's wanting you to do is point Tableau to the database that you would like to connect to. I'm going to extend this out here because I want to show you by default where Tableau looks for your documents. Tableau creates, when it's installed, its own folder, and this is the path to get to that folder. So under this PC, Documents, My Tableau repository, this is where inside data sources, because we're trying to connect to a data source, this is where Tableau will automatically store your documents if you don't tell it otherwise. Again, for the ease of this demonstration, I have told my machine to save what I want on the desktop. So you'll see this BA 342 Tableau folder, and I'm going to get this BA 342 database for Tableau on Mac. Again, it's named this because when we first thought about it, we were trying to enable the students who download Tableau on their Mac side to have a database to bring in. But we know from years of experience that it's just easier on the demonstration and that Tableau gets along better with Excel. So again, that's why we're using it for this. Once you tell Tableau to connect to this file, it brings you to the data source page. This data source page allows us to be able to link all of these tables together should we choose to use them in Tableau. So the way that you get to your data source is down here in the bottom left corner. You always have this data source tab. So we can decide, do we want to connect them all or do we want to just use some of them? For the sake of this class, we're only going to use some of them, not all of them, because we aren't going to have as robust a module for Tableau as we had for Access. So you'll remember when we worked in Access, we had to connect tables based on the query we were trying to do. So our logic had to be sound, and we had to select which tables we needed data from in order to make our queries work. Tableau works a little differently than Access in this regard, where it wants us to link all of our tables up front. So we will just go ahead and do that. To start with, we're not going to worry about orders and order lines in this particular module on Tableau. We're just going to worry about sales. So we'll start with the sales table. Start with the sales table because it links to the most tables and is the easiest thing to begin our connection from. We want to join to the sales table the customer table. You'll notice when I drag customer over here to this anywhere in this blank space, it's going to try to join it to the sales table. What's happening here is that Tableau doesn't know how I want it to join. It says, I don't know which field in the data source or the sales table you want me to connect this customers table to. Please help me. So we know from working with this database all semester that we need to connect customer ID in the sales table to customer ID in the customers table. Take a look at this with me real quick and take notice of why Tableau asks me this. If you notice, customer ID in the customers table is customer capital I lowercase d. If you notice over in the data source table, customer ID is customer capital I capital D. So it's not finding an exact match, which is why Tableau is asking me, how do I want to join this? It doesn't make an assumption because there are no two fields named the same thing. So we're going to join these together. Right now, the default for Tableau is the inner join, and we could change this to a variety of things. You'll notice down here at the bottom in this space, it shows us data. This is a great indicator that the joins that you have been successful because Tableau will just show nothing here if you have a join that's messed up. So this is a great way to check your work. So please don't hesitate to look down here and make sure that you have data. We know from logic back in our queries from exam 2 that it's possible that we have customers in this database that don't have sales, which logically would tell us that we want a right join here. We want all customers to come into this database regardless of whether we have sales. I could click on this right join, and I'll do it here just to show you that it works because we have an Excel database that we're connecting to. If you're connecting to Access, likely you will get a big, long, huge error if you try to click on this. So for the purposes of class, we're going to use inner joins to keep it simple, but please notice that you have the options to join these however you'd like. So we'll drag in customers. We're also going to want employees. Drag employees up here and drop it. Notice that Tableau connects sales to employees flawlessly. That's because the employee ID in the sales table and the employee ID in the employees table match. They're identical, so it is able to figure that out. We also would like the sales lines table, which it will join seamlessly as sales invoice ID is the primary key for these tables, spelled the same way. We're also going to grab shippers and bring it up here. Please notice that this one requires me to choose again, so I know that I want shipper ID in the sales table, and in the shipper table, I want shipper ID. Notice again, it's a capitalization issue, and that's why Tableau is asking me to verify which ones that I want. So now I would like to also add products. Please notice when I'm dragging these tables up here, I'm just dropping them in any blank space. Tableau is smart enough to connect them to the appropriate table. But notice what happens if I hover over one. It will oftentimes give me the option to drag table to union. If I wanted to union or append these two tables together, that's where I would drop it. I don't want to do that. I just want to join them. So anywhere in the blank space, we'll join that to sales lines. And lastly, we're going to drag categories up here and drop it, and it will join itself to products. Tableau is smart enough to know which tables join together based on those identical keys within them, foreign keys and primary keys. So to start off with our database, we should have these tables ready to join. Again, if you've joined to an Access database, you won't be able to bring in categories because categories isn't set up in the correct manner to bring it in your Access database. So if you've done that, don't worry about it. It's not detrimental. You're just not going to be able to pull category name when we work through some of these queries. Let's talk for a second about this connection point. We can connect to a live database or we can extract a database. When I was talking to you over on the first screen, the Connect screen, I talked about being able to connect to a live server. And many businesses do this. It requires much more computing power and much more active data to stay connected to a live database. It will eat your memory and your processing power should you choose to leave it like this, because Tableau will always be looking for live connections. If we hit this extract, we want to make sure that we have all of our tables connected the way we want before we hit extract. But what this is going to do is enable us with extra options, such as counting distinct items, which we're going to want to do in our visualizations. Plus, we don't want it to eat up our performance power, so we'll hit extract and create this extraction. Now, when I go down here to start my first visualization, it's going to tell me that I have to save this extraction, which of course I want to do. But again, it takes me to this My Tableau repository folder, which I don't want to be in, so I'll navigate out to my desktop and tell it to save here. And it's saving my sales data source plus all of these tables that I've connected. So this is an extract, and I'll just simply push save, and I'll be able to connect to that next time. That shows you the basics of how to connect to an Excel database in Tableau. So let's quickly run through the features of a Tableau workbook. Up here, we have our tabs, just like any Microsoft product, and we'll use these for various things. These are tabs. These things down here in this various sheet 1 and marks, these are called cards in Tableau. So you'll hear me talk about dragging these pills to the marks card or to the filter card or to the pages card. That's all this means, is this box called marks or filters or sheet 1. You'll also notice it looks very much like building a pivot table. We have rows and we have columns, and these are all of the data that we can choose from that's been pulled from the tables that we entered on the data source tab. One important thing to mention, we have items that are called dimensions and items that are called measures. I'm going to pull this bar up here so you can see some of each one. Dimensions are any field that we have that we don't want to do calculations with, that we don't want to mathematically aggregate together. So we don't want to sum these or average them or anything like that. And so these are called dimensions. And dimensions are things, again, that we don't want to mathematically aggregate together. Sometimes they're text, sometimes they're still numbers like employee ID, but we don't want to add employee IDs together. We're just simply know that those are stored as numbers. Tableau will do its best to figure out what you want, but sometimes it doesn't get it right. For example, down here, sales invoice ID is listed in the measures, which I said are things that we're going to want to aggregate or do math with. Well, sales invoice ID is not a measure, it is a dimension. So simply you will click on it, drag it up here and drop it in the dimensions card, and it will automatically take itself up to sales lines, which is where I grabbed it from down here. We'll do the same thing with the sales invoice ID from the sales table, drag it up here, and both of them will now appear in dimensions. We'll do one quick visualization to get started. But before we do that, I would like to show you some other things that you can do with these dimensions and measure names, especially over here. Our first visualization that we're going to use is going to involve customer country. So I'm scrolling trying to find customer, and if I remember that they're in alphabetical order, it becomes much easier. I'm going to go up here to this field called customer country. I'm going to right click on this field and I'm going to say rename. And I'm going to actually spell out the word customer and call this customer country. The reason that I'm going to do that is when I drag it over to create my visualization, I want it to call customer country exactly that. I don't want it to be abbreviated. And so the easiest way to change it in my visualization is to change it in the dimensions or the measures over here. So let's start a visualization. Let's take customer country and drag it to rows and create this lovely beginning of a table that gives us all the customer country. Well, if I want to know how many customers there are by country, we have to think logically, which we've been practicing all semester. So I know I need each country, but how do I get a number of customers? So there's a number of ways that I could do it. An easy way is to just take customer ID, and I'm going to drag it over here. You see where all of these ABCs are? I'm just going to take it over here, and I'm just going to drag it into this list of ABCs, and I'm going to just let it go. It's automatically going to list the customer IDs here for me, but that's not what I wanted it to do. I wanted it to count the customer IDs. So I'll go up here to the rows column, which is where it's decided it wanted to put it, and click on this down arrow. I want this customer ID to be a count. So I'm going to go down to measure, and I'm going to tell it I have two choices. I can count or I can count distinct. If I choose count, it's going to count every time there is a customer number. If I choose count distinct, it's going to count every time there's a customer number that is different from any other customer number. So in this case, I'm going to want a count distinct because I want each individual customer for each country. So I click on count distinct, and then it does this really weird visualization that I don't want. One thing I will tell you about Tableau is it's just get in here and click on stuff and try to figure out how it all works. So it's tried to take my count of customer IDs and make them rows again and gives me a weird visualization, which is all fine, but I don't like that. I want it to be separate, and so if I drag it up to columns, it will create this sideways bar chart. If I hover over these, it will tell me how many customers per country I have, which is great. You'll notice in my Tableau workbook, I'm missing a Show Me button. You likely have a Show Me button right here. My Show Me button is missing because of the dimensions of my virtual machine. I'm actually on a Mac myself, and so I'm missing my button in this dimension for virtual machine. So I can hit Control 1 and my Show Me will appear. So I get Show Me. And really, I want to create this count of customer country on this map. So I click on this map, click on Show Me again, and make it disappear. And then I get this lovely map that now if I hover over it tells me how many. And this visualization is much more visualization than a graph or just a chart that we could create in Excel. This is something that we couldn't create in Excel. But we have this one unknown down here that we want to figure out what in the world is this unknown. So we click on it, and it says there's one value that is an unknown geographic location. What do I want to do? Well, I want to edit it. I want to figure out what it is. And it says England. It doesn't know what England is. So I'm going to click on unrecognized, and I'm going to find what England could be. Well, England could be Great Britain. It could be a lot of things based on what I know about geography, which isn't much. I'm an accountant, right? But I know that it could be Great Britain, so I look for Great Britain. That's not it. And it could be, let's see, United Kingdom. That's another name for England. Let's see if United Kingdom is an option. United Kingdom it is. So I'm going to tell it that if I have England, I want that to be United Kingdom, and I'll click OK. And then you'll see England and United Kingdom have become the same, and I have a dot here in England. So that's the basics of what you can do with Tableau. There's a ton of things that you can do with Tableau. Right now you'll notice that these dots are size based on how many. So Norway has 1 customer. The United States has 601 customers, so its dot is significantly bigger. I could change what I want the count to from size. I could change it from size. Sorry, I'm clicking on buttons that I don't want to be clicking on. I could change it from size to color, and it creates this heat map that shows me based on color. There's lots of things that I can do. More on how to change titles and extra visualizations in a following video. Please continue to watch as we walk through some of the really cool things that Tableau can do. Thank you.